The fluorescent lights in the aviation hangar buzzed like angry wasps, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor where I'd spent the last 16 hours fixing a busted hydraulic system. My coveralls reeked of jet fuel and disappointment, but that was nothing compared to what waited for me at home. I should have known something was wrong when Nadine stopped complaining about my late nights. For 3 months, she'd been all sunshine and understanding, practically shoving me out the door for overtime shifts. "You work so hard, Grant," she'd coo, already dressed to the nines at 7 in the morning. "I'll just find something to keep myself busy." Yeah, she found something all right. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The text came through as I was washing grease off my hands in the hangar's grimy sink. My phone buzzed against the metal counter, and I almost ignored it. Nadine usually sent grocery lists or reminders about dinner plans we both knew I'd be too tired to keep. This wasn't a grocery list. "I'm staying at the Serenity Springs Spa Hotel for a few days. The massage therapist here really knows how to please a woman, unlike some people. Don't wait up. N." I read it 3 times before the words sank in. Then I laughed, actually laughed, standing there in that empty hangar at 2 in the morning. The sound echoed off the metal walls like a gunshot. "Well, I'll be damned," I said to nobody. She didn't even bother with the "it's not you, it's me" speech, just handed me a loaded gun and dared me to pull the trigger. Tommy Rodriguez, my supervisor, poked his head around the corner. "You talking to yourself again, Ellison? That's the first sign of crazy." "Nah, Tommy. That's the first sign of clarity." I held up my phone. My wife just texted me from a spa hotel to tell me she's screwing her massage therapist. Tommy's eyebrows shot up. "Jesus, you okay, man?" Never better. And the scary thing was, I meant it. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely awake. I'm going home to see what other surprises are waiting for me. The drive home took 20 minutes through empty suburban streets lined with identical houses and manicured lawns. Our place sat at the end of Maple Court, a 2-story colonial that Nadine had insisted we buy because it projected success. The porch light was off, and her BMW was gone from the driveway. Inside, the house felt different, colder. Even our dog, a lazy golden retriever named Murphy, looked up from his bed with what I swear was pity in his brown eyes. "Even you know she's gone, don't you, boy?" I scratched behind his ears. "Hell, you probably saw her packing." I walked through the house, taking inventory. Half her clothes were missing from the closet. Her expensive makeup had vanished from the bathroom counter. The framed photos of us from our wedding 10 years ago still sat on the mantel, but they looked like evidence from a crime scene now. In the kitchen, I found a note stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a tiny airplane, a gift from my first year at the aviation company. "Grant, need some time to think about us. Don't call, don't follow me. When I'm ready to talk, I'll let you know. Nadine." "When she's ready," I muttered, crumpling the note. How thoughtful. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat at the kitchen table, staring at that text message. The Serenity Springs Spa Hotel. I knew the place. 40 minutes outside town, catering to wealthy women who needed to reconnect with themselves for $300 a night. My phone rang. For a split second, I thought it might be Nadine, calling to explain, to apologize, to tell me it was all a mistake. But the caller ID showed my sister Jenny's name. "Grant, I just saw Nadine's Instagram post. She's at some fancy spa. I thought you guys were having money troubles." I pulled up Instagram on my phone. There it was, a photo of Nadine in a fluffy white bathrobe, champagne glass in hand, caption reading, "Finally getting the attention I deserve. Yuch self-care, wanshi kor, worth it, in shashind new beginnings." The comments were already rolling in from her salon friends and clients. "You earned it, girl." Yvonne, style queen. "Treat yourself, beautiful." Beat, mani-pedi maven. "About time someone appreciated you properly." Salon Sarah 22. "Grant, you still there?" "Yeah, Jenny, I'm here." I took a long pull of beer. "And no, we're not having money troubles. At least we weren't until she decided to blow our savings on spa treatments and her boy toy." "Her what?" "She's cheating on me. Texted me about it like she was reporting the weather." Jenny was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" I looked around the empty house, at Murphy watching me with those knowing eyes, at the wedding photos that now felt like exhibits in a museum of late dreams. "I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for," I said. "An unforgettable spa experience." After Jenny hung up, promising to call tomorrow, I sat in the silence and let my mind work. Nadine thought she was so clever, so untouchable. She'd always been the social butterfly, the one with connections and charm. I was just the grease monkey who paid the bills and kept his mouth shut. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. I opened my laptop and did some research. The Serenity Springs Spa Hotel had a website full of glossy photos and testimonials. Their staff directory listed a massage therapist named Darren Pike, age 35, certified in deep tissue therapy and holistic wellness. Holistic wellness, I snorted. Is that what we're calling it now? A quick social media search revealed more about Mr. Pike. Divorced twice, no kids, lived in a downtown apartment above a yoga studio. His Instagram was full of shirtless photos and inspirational quotes about finding your inner goddess and releasing tension through therapeutic touch. This guy was a walking cliché, and my wife had fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. I picked up my phone and dialed the spa hotel's main number. Serenity Springs, this is Ashley speaking. How can I help you achieve inner peace tonight? Hi, Ashley. I'm hoping you can help me with something. My wife is staying there, Nadine Ellison. She's been raving about your massage therapist, Darren Pike. I wanted to surprise her with an extended session, but I need to know when would be best to call and arrange it. Ashley's voice brightened. Oh, how sweet. Let me check our schedule. Mrs. Ellison has been such a delightful guest. She and Darren have really connected. I bet they have. It looks like they have another session scheduled for tomorrow evening at 9. That's after our regular hours, but Darren sometimes offers special extended treatments for our premium guests. Extended treatments? Of course he does. I grabbed a pen and started taking notes. And these sessions, they're in the regular treatment rooms? Well, for the extended sessions, Darren usually uses the private suite on the 3rd floor. It has its own entrance and more comprehensive amenities. Comprehensive, that's one way to put it. I could hear Ashley starting to sound confused, so I shifted gears. You know what? Let me think about the timing and call back tomorrow. I want this surprise to be perfect. Absolutely. Mrs. Ellison is so lucky to have such a thoughtful husband. Yeah, I said, staring at that Instagram post again. Lucky her. After I hung up, I sat back and smiled for the first time in hours. Nadine wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I'd been holding back for 10 years, and now the gloves were coming off. I opened my laptop again and started making a list. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Tommy didn't question it. Word had already spread about Nadine's little vacation, and everyone knew I was dealing with what they politely called personal issues. I spent the morning at the bank, moving our joint savings into an account with only my name on it. Perfectly legal, since I was the one who'd earned most of it anyway. Then I visited a locksmith and had him change all the locks on the house. Also legal, since my name was the only one on the deed. By noon, I was sitting in my truck outside Nadine's salon, sheer perfection, watching the usual parade of suburban housewives coming and going with their fresh highlights and gossip. The place was Nadine's pride and joy, a converted Victorian house downtown with exposed brick walls and vintage styling chairs that cost more than most people's cars. I knew the rhythm of the place. Tuesdays were slow, which meant the staff would be bored and chatty. Perfect for gathering intelligence. I walked in like I owned the place, which technically I partially did, since I'd co-signed the business loan 5 years ago. Grant. Melissa, the receptionist, looked up from her phone with surprise. What brings you by? Nadine's not here? I know. She's at that spa getting pampered. I leaned against the counter, casual as could be. Actually, I wanted to ask you girls something. This massage therapist she's been seeing, Darren Pike, you know anything about him? Melissa's eyes lit up with gossip hunger. Oh my God, yes. Nadine's been talking about him for weeks. She says he has magic hands. Magic hands, I repeated. And how exactly did she find this guy? Yvonne recommended him? Melissa glanced toward the back of the salon where Yvonne Martinez, Nadine's business partner, was cutting someone's hair. She said Darren specializes in helping women rediscover their sensuality through therapeutic touch. I nearly choked. Their sensuality? I know, right? Sounds amazing. Nadine said he really understands women's needs in a way that most men don't. Melissa lowered her voice conspiratorially. Between you and me, I think she's got a little crush. A little crush. I nodded thoughtfully. And these sessions, they're expensive? Super expensive. Like $300 an hour. But Nadine said it was worth every penny for the personal attention. $300 an hour. I did quick math in my head. Nadine had been seeing this guy twice a week for a month. That was almost $5,000 of our money spent on her therapeutic affair. Well, I said, pushing off from the counter. I hope she's getting her money's worth. I left the salon and drove straight to the landing strip, a dive bar near the airport where off-duty mechanics and airport workers went to complain about management and ex-wives. It was barely 2 in the afternoon, but the parking lot was half full. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of fried food. I found my old friend Tommy Chen at the bar, nursing a beer and watching ESPN on the mounted TV. "Grant," Tommy turned on his stool. "Heard you were having some domestic troubles." "You could say that." I ordered a whiskey and sat down. My wife's at a spa hotel, screwing her massage therapist and posting about it on social media. "Jesus." Tommy shook his head. "What are you going to do?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. I could hire a lawyer, file for divorce, split everything down the middle, and walk away. Or," I took a sip of whiskey, feeling it burn, "or I could make sure she never forgets the lesson she's about to learn." Tommy was quiet for a moment. He'd been through 2 messy divorces himself and understood the particular kind of rage that came with betrayal. "You want my advice?" he finally said. "Whatever you do, make it legal. Scorched earth, but keep yourself out of jail." That's exactly what I was thinking. I spent the next hour at the bar, making phone calls and setting things in motion. First, I called the State Board of Massage Therapy and filed a complaint against Darren Pike for potential ethical violations and inappropriate conduct with clients. I gave them Nadine's name and the hotel information, along with a detailed timeline of their therapeutic relationship. Next, I called the Salon Owners Association and reported concerns about one of their members potentially misusing business funds for personal expenses. I mentioned that I had documentation of large cash withdrawals that didn't match any business receipts. Finally, I called Ashley back at the spa hotel. "Hi, Ashley, this is Grant Ellison again. I've been thinking about that surprise for my wife, and I have a proposition for you." "Oh, wonderful. What did you have in mind?" "I'd like to pay you $200 cash for some very specific information. Nothing illegal, just details about my wife's stay that I can use to plan the perfect surprise." There was a pause. "What kind of details?" "Photos of her and Darren together. Receipts for their room service. Maybe some information about their schedule." I let that sink in. Like I said, nothing illegal. Just a husband wanting to know how his wife is spending their money. I don't know if I should. Ashley, I'm not asking you to do anything wrong. These are just business records, and she's my wife. The money she's spending is half mine." I softened my voice. "Look, I know she's cheating on me. I just need proof so I can move on with my life. Can you help me out?" Another pause, longer this time. "Cash?" $200 cash tonight." "Okay," she whispered. "Meet me in the hotel parking lot at 11. I'll have what you need." I hung up and finished my whiskey, feeling the familiar satisfaction of a plan coming together. Nadine thought she was so smart, so careful, but she'd forgotten that I'd spent 20 years in aviation maintenance, where attention to detail and methodical problem-solving were really matters. She was about to discover that her husband wasn't as stupid as she'd assumed. At 10:30 that night, I drove to the Serenity Springs Spa Hotel. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few luxury cars belonging to guests and staff. I spotted Nadine's BMW parked near the back, next to a silver Porsche that probably belonged to her boy toy. Ashley met me by the employee entrance, looking nervous but determined. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 22, with the kind of earnest face that suggested she was doing this more for the drama than the money. "I have everything you asked for," she whispered, handing me a manila envelope. Photos from the security cameras, copies of their room service orders, and Darren's schedule for the rest of the week. I handed her $200 bills. "What about tonight? Are they together now?" She nodded toward the 3rd floor. "Private suite. They've been up there for 3 hours. Ordered champagne and strawberries around 9. "Champagne and strawberries," I repeated. "How romantic." I opened the envelope and flipped through the contents by the light of my phone. The security camera photos were grainy but clear enough. Nadine and Darren holding hands in the hallway, kissing by the elevator, entering the private suite together. The room service receipts showed a pattern going back 3 weeks: expensive wine, gourmet meals, couples massage packages. "There's one more thing," Ashley said quietly. "They're planning to spend the whole weekend together. Darren told the front desk he's taking personal time, and your wife extended her reservation through Sunday." "A romantic weekend getaway," I said. How thoughtful of them to document everything so thoroughly. I thanked Ashley and walked back to my truck, but instead of leaving, I parked in the shadows at the far end of the lot where I could see both cars clearly. Then I settled in to wait. At 2 a.m, Darren finally emerged from the hotel's side entrance, looking satisfied and disheveled. He walked toward his Porsche, keys jingling in his hand. I got out of my truck and approached him in the darkness. "Excuse me," I called out. "Darren Pike?" He turned, squinting in the dim light. "Yeah, who's asking?" "Grant Ellison, Nadine's husband." The color drained from his face. "Oh, shit." "Yeah, shit is right." I stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to talk, but far enough to avoid any stupid moves. "I just wanted to thank you personally for taking such good care of my wife, really going above and beyond the call of duty." "Look, man, I can explain." "No need to explain. I understand perfectly. You're a professional, and she's paying for professional services. $300 an hour, right? That's good money." Darren relaxed slightly, probably thinking I was going to be reasonable about this. "It's not what you think. Nadine and I have a genuine connection." "A genuine connection," I nodded. "That's beautiful, really. True love at $300 an hour." "It's not about the money." "Of course it's not. It's about helping her rediscover her sensuality through therapeutic touch. I get it." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the security camera photos. "This looks very therapeutic." His face went white again. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter? The point is, I have documentation of your entire therapeutic relationship, photos, receipts, schedules, everything." I put the phone away. "Now, I could cause problems for you. Report you to the state board, file complaints with the hotel, maybe share these photos with some of your other clients. But I'm not going to do that." "You're not?" "Nope, because you're going to do me a favor instead." I smiled in the darkness. "You're going to make sure Nadine has the most memorable weekend of her life. Really give her the full treatment, you know? Make her feel special, desired, like she's the center of your universe." Darren looked confused. "I don't understand." "You will. Just remember, whatever happens next week, you brought it on yourself." I started walking back toward my truck, then turned around. "Oh, and Darren, you might want to check your tires." I drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I could see him frantically checking his car. He'd find all 4 tires flat, with a note tucked under his windshield wiper. "Hope you're better at massages than tire changes. A friend." By the time I got home, it was almost 3 in the morning. Murphy greeted me at the door, tail wagging, happy to have company in the empty house. "Just you and me now, boy," I said, scratching his ears. "But don't worry, this is just the beginning." Friday morning brought the first sign that my plan was working. I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when my phone rang. Nadine, calling from the spa. "Grant, what the hell did you do to Darren's car?" "Good morning to you too, sweetheart. I'm fine, thanks for asking. How's your therapeutic weekend going?" "Don't play dumb with me." Someone flattened his tires and left a threatening note. "That's terrible. Did you call the police?" "Of course we called the police. They said it was probably just vandalism, but I know it was you." "Why would you think that? I'm just a simple aviation mechanic. I don't know anything about tire pressure or leaving cryptic messages." I took a sip of coffee. "Although I have to say, it sounds like someone doesn't appreciate Darren's therapeutic techniques." "This isn't funny, Grant." "You're right, it's not funny. It's hilarious." I set down my coffee cup. "Tell me, how are you paying for this romantic getaway? Because I checked our bank account yesterday, and it seems like someone's been making some very expensive withdrawals." Silence on the other end. "Nadine? You still there?" "We need to talk when I get home." "Oh, we'll talk all right. But first, you should probably check your Instagram. You're getting some interesting comments on that spa photo." I hung up and immediately opened Instagram to watch the show. The comments on Nadine's post had multiplied overnight, but now they weren't all supportive. "Girl, is that your husband's money you're spending?" Salon client 47. "Heard some interesting things about your massage therapist." Town gossip. "Hope the spa treatments are worth your marriage." Neighbor Nancy, "Grant Ellison deserves better than this." Aviation wife. The tide was turning, just as I'd hoped. Small towns thrived on gossip, and nothing traveled faster than a cheating spouse story. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy Chen. "Heard through the grapevine that the state board is investigating some massage therapist. Wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" I texted back, "Can't imagine what you're talking about. I'm just a concerned citizen who believes in professional ethics." By noon, I was back at the landing strip, this time meeting with Jake Morrison, an old friend who worked in commercial real estate. Jake had helped Nadine find the location for her salon 5 years ago, and he still handled the lease negotiations. "Grant, buddy, I heard about Nadine. I'm sorry, man." "Don't be sorry. Be helpful." I slid a manila envelope across the table. I need you to look at these financial records and tell me if there's anything interesting about the way sheer perfection has been handling its money lately. Jake opened the envelope and studied the bank statements and receipts I'd gathered. His expression grew more serious with each page. Jesus, Grant. She's been pulling cash out of the business account almost weekly. 500 here, 300 there, always in amounts small enough to avoid triggering any automatic reporting. And that money's not going toward business expenses? Not based on these receipts. Looks like she's been funding a pretty expensive personal habit. Jake looked up. This could be a problem for her business license. Mixing personal and business funds is a serious violation. Hypothetically speaking, if someone were to report these discrepancies to the appropriate authorities, what would happen? Jake grinned. Hypothetically? The state would audit the business, freeze the accounts pending investigation, and probably suspend her license until everything got sorted out. Could take months. Months, I repeated. That's a long time for a business to be shut down. Long enough to lose most of your clients to the competition. I thanked Jake and drove back to the salon, but this time I didn't go inside. Instead, I parked across the street and watched. The place seemed busy enough. Women coming and going, stylists working at their stations, Yvonne Martinez holding court at the reception desk like she owned the place. Yvonne had always rubbed me the wrong way. She was one of those women who smiled to your face while calculating how to use you, and she'd been Nadine's business partner since day one. More importantly, she was the one who'd recommended Darren Pike to my wife. I pulled out my phone and called the salon. Sheer perfection, this is Yvonne. Hi, Yvonne, this is Grant. Her voice immediately cooled. Grant, Nadine's not here. I know, she's at the spa with her massage therapist. I was actually calling to thank you. Thank me. For recommending Darren Pike to her. Really opened my eyes to what kind of person my wife is. I paused, and what kind of friends she has. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You recommended a massage therapist who specializes in seducing married women. You encouraged my wife to spend thousands of dollars of our money on therapeutic sessions. You've been covering for her affair for weeks. My voice hardened. The question is, why? Nadine is my friend and business partner. I support her happiness. Her happiness. Right. I watched through the salon window as Yvonne paced behind the reception desk, phone pressed to her ear. Tell me, Yvonne, how long have you been planning to buy out Nadine's share of the business? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You've been setting her up for months, haven't you? Encouraging the affair, helping her make financial mistakes, positioning yourself to swoop in when everything falls apart. I laughed. You're even smarter than I gave you credit for. You're paranoid, Grant. Maybe, but I'm also right. I started my truck. Enjoy the show, Yvonne. It's about to get very entertaining. That afternoon, I drove to the offices of the State Board of Massage Therapy and hand-delivered a formal complaint against Darren Pike, complete with photographs, financial records, and a detailed timeline of his relationship with Nadine. The clerk who accepted my paperwork assured me that all complaints were investigated thoroughly and that Mr. Pike would be notified within 48 hours. Next stop was the Better Business Bureau, where I filed a complaint against Sheer Perfection for misappropriation of business funds. I provided copies of bank statements showing the pattern of cash withdrawals that corresponded exactly with Nadine's massage appointments. My final stop was the offices of the local newspaper, the Millfield Gazette. The editor, Susan Walsh, had been trying to get an interview with me for years about safety issues at the airport. I'd always declined, but today I had a different story to tell. Grant Ellison, Susan said, looking surprised as I walked into her office. To what do I owe the pleasure? I have a story for you about business ethics and professional misconduct in the local wellness industry. Susan's eyes lit up. I'm listening. I spent an hour laying out the whole sordid tale, the affair, the financial improprieties, the pattern of behavior that suggested this wasn't Darren Pike's first time seducing a married client. I provided documentation for everything, along with contact information for other women who might have similar stories. This is quite a bombshell, Susan said, reviewing my evidence. Are you sure you want this to go public? It's going to be embarrassing for your wife. My wife made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. And you? What do you get out of this? I stood up and headed for the door. Justice, and maybe a little entertainment. That evening, I was back home with Murphy when my phone started ringing. First it was Jenny, my sister, who'd heard through her network of suburban mom friends that something big was happening with Nadine's business. Then it was Tommy from work, reporting that guys at the bar were talking about some massage therapist who was about to lose his license. Finally, it was my neighbor Bob, calling to say he'd seen a state inspector's car parked outside Sheer Perfection that afternoon. Sounds like someone's having a bad week, Bob said with barely concealed glee. He'd never liked Nadine, mainly because she'd complained about his lawn maintenance and his dogs barking. Sounds like someone's about to have an even worse weekend, I replied. At 9 o'clock, Ashley texted me from the spa. Your wife and Darren had a huge fight tonight. She locked herself in the bathroom and won't come out. He's drinking at the hotel bar. I texted back. What were they fighting about? He got a call from some state board. His license is being investigated. He blamed her for ruining his career. How romantic. True love at its finest. Should I keep watching them? No need. I think they're about to solve my problem for me. I poured myself a whiskey and sat on my front porch, looking out at the quiet suburban street where I'd lived for 8 years. Tomorrow was Saturday, which meant Nadine would probably try to come home and explain everything. She'd want to work things out and save our marriage. But it was too late for that. The wheels were already in motion, and there was no stopping what came next. Murphy came out and sat beside me, resting his head on my knee. Don't worry, boy, I said, scratching his ears. We're going to be just fine. Better than fine, actually. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you're clever, but you're just a pawn in someone else's game. I stared at the message for a long moment, then traced the number through a reverse lookup app. It came back registered to Y. Martinez, Yvonne. I smiled and typed back, Game on. Saturday morning brought chaos in the form of Nadine's BMW screeching into our driveway at 7 a.m. I was already awake, sitting in the kitchen with coffee and the morning paper, when she burst through the front door using her key, which no longer worked because I'd changed the locks. She stood in the doorway, still in her spa robe and slippers, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, looking like she'd driven straight from the hotel without stopping to clean up. The locks, she said, breathing hard. You changed the locks. Good morning, Nadine. You look terrible. Rough night at the spa? Don't. She held up her hand. Just don't. We need to talk. I'm listening. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals over the past 10 years. Now it felt like a negotiation table between enemies. I know you're angry, she began. Angry? I laughed. I'm not angry. I'm impressed. You managed to destroy our marriage, your business, and your boyfriend's career all in one weekend. That takes real talent. Darren isn't my boyfriend. It was a mistake. A mistake that cost us $5,000 and 3 months of lies. I set down my coffee cup. But here's the thing, Nadine. I don't think it was a mistake at all. I think you planned this whole thing. That's ridiculous. Is it? Let me tell you what I think happened. I leaned back in my chair. I think you and Yvonne cooked this up together. She recommends Darren, you start the affair, and when everything falls apart, she's perfectly positioned to buy out your share of the salon for pennies on the dollar. Nadine's face went pale. You're being paranoid. Am I? Then explain this. I pulled out my phone and showed her the text from Yvonne. Your business partner sent me this last night. Sounds like someone who knows more about my plans than she should. Nadine stared at the phone screen, and I saw the exact moment when the pieces clicked together in her mind. Oh my God, she whispered. She played us both. Now you're getting it. Yvonne knew about Darren's reputation. She knew he'd been investigated before for inappropriate conduct with clients. She set me up. And me too. She figured I'd react exactly the way I did. File complaints, cause a scandal, force you out of the business. I smiled grimly. The only problem is, I figured it out before she could complete her takeover. Nadine looked up at me with something like hope in her eyes. So what do we do? We? There is no we, Nadine. You made your choice when you decided to cheat on me and broadcast it to the world. I stood up. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to destroy Yvonne Martinez the same way she tried to destroy us. Grant, please. Can't we work this out? I made a mistake, but we can fix this. No, we can't. Because this isn't about the affair anymore. It's about respect, and you lost mine the moment you sent that text from the spa. I walked toward the door. You can stay here today to pack your things. After that, find somewhere else to live. I left her sitting at the kitchen table and drove to the landing strip. It was barely 9 a.m., but the parking lot was already half full with the usual crowd of divorced men and third-shift workers drowning their sorrows. Tommy Chen was at his usual spot at the bar, looking like he'd been there all night. Grant, heard your wife came home. How'd that go? About as well as you'd expect. I ordered a whiskey, even though it was too early for hard liquor. Tell me something, Tommy. You still have contacts at the police department? A few. Why? I need someone to look into Yvonne Martinez's background, business records, personal history, maybe some financial irregularities. Tommy grinned. You think she's dirty? I know she's dirty. I just need proof. Give me a few hours. I'll make some calls. While Tommy worked his contacts, I drove to the newspaper office to meet with Susan Walsh again. She was at her desk, typing furiously on her laptop. Grant, she said, without looking up. Perfect timing. I've been making calls about your massage therapist friend. Turns out he's quite the character. What did you find? 3 complaints filed against him in 2 different states over the past 5 years. All from married women, all claiming he crossed professional boundaries during therapy sessions. She looked up. The man's a serial predator. And my wife was just his latest victim. Looks that way. But here's the interesting part. In each case, the women were referred to him by female business partners or friends who later benefited financially from the resulting scandals. I felt a chill run down my spine. Benefited how? Business buyouts, insurance claims, divorce settlements that favored the referring party. Susan pulled up a file on her computer. There's a pattern here, Grant. Someone's been using Darren Pike as a weapon to destroy marriages and business partnerships. Someone like Yvonne Martinez. That would be my guess. The question is, can we prove it? My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Found something interesting about your business partner, friend. Meet me at the bar. I thanked Susan and drove back to the landing strip, where Tommy was waiting with a manila folder and a satisfied grin. Your instincts were right, he said, sliding the folder across the table. Yvonne Martinez has been planning this for months. I opened the folder and found copies of loan applications, business registration documents, and bank statements. She applied for a business loan 6 months ago, Tommy explained. Enough money to buy out a partner and expand operations. The application specifically mentions acquiring an existing salon with an established client base. 6 months ago. That's right around the time she started encouraging Nadine to take better care of herself. Gets better. I had my guy run her financial records. She's been making payments to a consulting firm called Lifestyle Solutions LLC for the past year. Never heard of it. That's because it's a shell company. Guess who the sole proprietor is? I looked at the business registration document and felt my pressure spike. Darren Pike. Your wife's massage therapist has been on Yvonne's payroll for 12 months. This whole thing was a setup from the beginning. I stared at the documents, feeling a mixture of rage and admiration. Yvonne had orchestrated the entire affair, using Darren as bait and Nadine as a target, all to position herself for a hostile takeover of the salon. There's one more thing, Tommy said quietly. My contact at the PD says Yvonne filed a restraining order application yesterday. Claims you've been threatening her and her business. I never threatened her. Doesn't matter. If it goes through, you won't be able to go within 500 feet of the salon or contact her directly. Cuts you out of any chance to expose her scheme. I closed the folder and finished my whiskey. When's the hearing? Monday morning, 9 a.m. Perfect. I stood up and shook Tommy's hand. Thanks for the intel. Now I need to make some calls. That afternoon, I spent 3 hours on the phone with lawyers, accountants, and business consultants, laying the groundwork for what I had planned. By evening, I had everything I needed for Monday's hearing. I also had something else, a plan to give Yvonne Martinez a taste of her own medicine. Sunday morning, I drove to the salon. It was closed, but I could see lights on in the back office where Yvonne was probably working on her takeover paperwork. I didn't go inside. That would have violated the restraining order she was trying to get. But I didn't need to. Instead, I called Susan Walsh at the newspaper. Susan, it's Grant. I have the story of the year for you. Business fraud, conspiracy, and a serial predator who's been operating under the protection of a local businesswoman. I'm listening. Meet me at the landing strip tonight at 8. Bring your camera and your recorder. You're going to want to document everything. That evening, the landing strip was packed with the usual Sunday crowd, plus a few extra faces I'd specifically invited. Susan Walsh sat at a corner table with her equipment ready. Tommy Chen held court at the bar, making sure everyone knew something big was about to happen. At exactly 8 o'clock, I stood up and called for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement to make about some recent events involving my wife, her business partner, and a certain massage therapist. The room went quiet. Everyone loved a good scandal, especially when it involved people they knew. As most of you know, my wife Nadine has been having an affair with a massage therapist named Darren Pike. What you don't know is that the entire affair was orchestrated by her business partner, Yvonne Martinez, as part of an elaborate scheme to steal Nadine's share of their salon. I pulled out the documents Tommy had given me and held them up. I have proof that Yvonne has been paying Darren Pike for over a year through a shell company. I have evidence that she planned this takeover months in advance. And I have testimony from multiple women in other states who were victimized by the same scheme. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Susan Walsh was frantically taking notes and photos. Tomorrow morning, Yvonne Martinez is going to court to try to get a restraining order against me. She claims I've been threatening her business. The truth is, she's trying to silence me before I can expose her fraud. I looked directly at the camera Susan was holding. Yvonne, I know you're watching this somehow. You wanted to play games? You wanted to destroy my marriage and steal my wife's business? Congratulations. You succeeded. I smiled coldly. Now let me show you how the game is really played. The crowd cheered and applauded as I sat down. Susan immediately started interviewing people, gathering reactions and quotes for her story. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You have no idea what you've started. I texted back. See you in court tomorrow, Yvonne. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of drizzle that made everything look dirty and depressing. Perfect weather for what I had planned. The courthouse was a squat brick building downtown, surrounded by the kind of struggling businesses and empty storefronts that defined small-town America in the 21st century. I arrived early and found Susan Walsh already there, camera ready, along with a small crowd of curious onlookers who'd read her story in the morning edition of the Gazette. The headline read, Local salon owner accused of elaborate fraud scheme. Below it was a photo of Yvonne Martinez looking shocked and angry, taken outside her salon the night before when Susan had ambushed her for comment. Tommy Chen met me on the courthouse steps, carrying a briefcase full of documents. You ready for this? He asked. I've been ready for weeks. Good, because Yvonne brought reinforcements. I looked across the parking lot and saw a black Mercedes pulling up. Yvonne got out, followed by two men in expensive suits who had lawyer written all over them. She's not messing around, Tommy observed. Neither am I. We walked into the courthouse together, past the metal detectors and bored security guards, into the small courtroom where restraining order hearings were held. The room was maybe 30 feet square, with wooden benches that looked like they'd been there since the 1950s and fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects. Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to my friend Jake, was already at her bench, reviewing paperwork. She was a stern woman in her 60s who'd been handling family court cases for 20 years and had seen every kind of domestic drama imaginable. Yvonne sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyers, looking composed and professional in a navy blue suit. She'd styled her hair and makeup perfectly, projecting the image of a successful businesswoman being harassed by a dangerous ex-husband. I sat at the defendant's table with Tommy, who'd gotten a temporary law license just for this hearing through some loophole he'd discovered. We looked like exactly what we were, a mechanic and an ex-cop who were way out of their league, which was exactly what I wanted Yvonne to think. This is a hearing for a temporary restraining order, Judge Morrison announced. Ms. Martinez, you may present your case. Yvonne's lead lawyer, a slick-looking guy named Peterson, stood up and launched into a carefully prepared speech about his client's fear for her safety and her business. He painted me as an unstable man who'd become obsessed with destroying innocent people because of his wife's infidelity. Your Honor, Mr. Ellison has engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment against my client. He's filed false complaints with state agencies, spread malicious rumors, and made threatening phone calls. Ms. Martinez is simply trying to protect herself and her employees from further intimidation. Peterson presented a timeline of my activities over the past week, making each action sound sinister and threatening. The bank account transfers became financial manipulation. The complaint to the massage therapy board became filing false reports. My phone calls to Yvonne became verbal threats and intimidation. It was a masterful performance, and I could see Judge Morrison taking notes. Ms. Martinez, the judge said, do you have anything to add? Yvonne stood up, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Your Honor, I've been friends with Nadine Ellison for 5 years. When her marriage started having problems, I tried to be supportive. I recommended a massage therapist who I thought might help her with stress relief. She paused for dramatic effect. I had no idea that Mr. Ellison would react so violently to his wife seeking help. He's made my life a nightmare. I'm afraid to go to work, afraid to answer my phone. All I want is to be left alone to run my business in peace. Judge Morrison nodded sympathetically. Mr. Ellison, how do you respond to these allegations? I stood up slowly, looking every inch the defeated husband I was supposed to be. Your Honor, I admit I've been angry about my wife's affair. Any man would be, but I haven't threatened anyone or done anything illegal. I paused. However, I do have some information that might be relevant to this case. What kind of information? Information about Ms. Martinez's business practices and her relationship with the massage therapist in question. Peterson jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Ellison's personal grievances are not relevant to this restraining order hearing. Actually, I said, they are, because Ms. Martinez hasn't been honest with the court about her role in this situation. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Explain. Tommy handed me the briefcase, and I pulled out the documents we'd prepared. Your Honor, I have evidence that Ms. Martinez has been paying the massage therapist, Darren Pike, for over a year through a shell company. I have proof that she planned to acquire my wife's share of their business months before the affair began, and I have testimony from women in other states who were victimized by the same scheme. The courtroom went silent. Yvonne's face had gone white, and her lawyers were frantically whispering to each other. Furthermore, I continued, I have financial records showing that Ms. Martinez has been embezzling money from her business to fund this operation. She's not the victim here, Your Honor. She's the perpetrator. I handed the documents to the bailiff, who passed them to Judge Morrison. She spent several minutes reviewing them, her expression growing more serious with each page. Ms. Martinez, the judge said finally, these are very serious allegations. How do you respond? Yvonne looked at her lawyers, but they seemed as shocked as she was. Finally, she stood up. Your Honor, those documents are fabricated. Mr. Ellison is a desperate man who's trying to deflect attention from his own criminal behavior. Criminal behavior? I laughed. Your Honor, the only criminal behavior here is the conspiracy to defraud that Ms. Martinez has been running for over a year. That's enough, Judge Morrison said sharply. Mr. Ellison, do you have witnesses to support these allegations? I do. I turned toward the back of the courtroom. I call Susan Walsh. Susan stood up from the gallery and walked to the witness stand. As a reporter, she'd been investigating the story for days and had uncovered even more evidence than I'd provided. Ms. Walsh, I said, can you tell the court what you discovered about Darren Pike's history? Darren Pike has been the subject of professional misconduct complaints in 3 different states over the past 5 years. In each case, he was referred to married women by female business partners who later benefited financially from the resulting scandals. And what did you discover about Ms. Martinez's financial arrangements with Mr. Pike? Bank records show that Ms. Martinez has been making monthly payments to Pike's shell company since last January. The payments total nearly $15,000. Yvonne's lawyers were furiously objecting, but Judge Morrison waved them off. Ms. Walsh, do you have documentation of these payments? I do, Your Honor. Susan handed over a thick folder of bank statements and business records. Judge Morrison spent another 10 minutes reviewing the evidence while the courtroom waited in tense silence. Finally, she looked up. Ms. Martinez, based on the evidence presented here today, I'm not only denying your request for a restraining order, I'm also ordering a full investigation into your business practices. The district attorney's office will be notified of these proceedings. Yvonne stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You can't believe these lies. Sit down, Ms. Martinez, Judge Morrison said coldly. You're already in enough trouble. But Yvonne was past caring about judicial protocol. She turned toward me, her carefully composed mask finally slipping. You think you've won. You think you're so smart. You destroyed your own marriage. Nadine came to me crying about how neglectful you were, how you never paid attention to her anymore. All I did was give her what she wanted. What she wanted, I repeated, or what you convinced her she wanted? She wanted excitement. She wanted passion. She wanted someone who appreciated her. Yvonne was shouting now, completely out of control. You were boring her. So you decided to help her find someone more interesting, for a price. I built that business. I made it successful. She was just extra weight. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Ms. Martinez, you need to control yourself, or I'll hold you in contempt. But Yvonne wasn't done. She turned back to me, her face twisted with rage. You want to know the truth? Nadine was easy. Pathetically easy. All I had to do was tell her she deserved better, and she practically threw herself at Darren. She's weak, just like you. Maybe, I said calmly. But I'm not stupid, and I'm not finished. I pulled out one final document and handed it to the judge. Your Honor, this is a lawsuit I'm filing against Ms. Martinez for conspiracy, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I'm seeking damages for the destruction of my marriage, the theft of my wife's business assets, and the cost of the investigation that exposed her scheme. Judge Morrison reviewed the lawsuit filing and nodded. This appears to be in order. Ms. Martinez, you'll need to respond to this within 30 days. Yvonne's lawyers were already packing up their briefcases, clearly wanting to distance themselves from their client as quickly as possible. Furthermore, I continued, I've arranged for the State Attorney General's office to investigate Ms. Martinez's business for potential RICO violations. Operating a shell company to defraud multiple victims across state lines is a federal crime. That got everyone's attention. RICO charges were serious business, the kind that could result in decades in federal prison. Yvonne stared at me with pure hatred. "You bastard! You've destroyed everything." "No," I said, standing up and gathering my papers. "You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone knew about it." As we left the courtroom, Susan Walsh was already on her phone with her editor, dictating the story that would run in the afternoon edition. The crowd of onlookers followed us out, buzzing with excitement about the morning's revelations. Tommy clapped me on the shoulder. "That was beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful." "It's not over yet," I said. "This was just the opening act." That afternoon, I drove to the Serenity Springs Spa Hotel one last time. Darren Pike was in the parking lot, loading boxes into his car. When he saw me, he looked like he wanted to run. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "My license got suspended," he said without looking at me. "The hotel fired me. I'm moving back to California." "California's nice. Lots of lonely housewives there too, I bet." He finally looked up, and I saw fear in his eyes. "Look, I'm sorry about what happened with your wife. It wasn't supposed to go this far." "How far was it supposed to go?" "Yvonne said it would just be a few sessions, enough to create some drama, maybe cause some problems in your marriage. She never said anything about destroying your life." "My life?" I laughed. "My life is fine. It's your life that's destroyed, and Yvonne's, and my wife's." I stepped closer. "But here's the thing, Darren. You're going to keep running for the rest of your life, because every time you try to set up shop somewhere new, I'm going to make sure your new neighbors know exactly what kind of man you are. You can't do that. Watch me." I pulled out my phone and showed him a website I'd created that morning. Meet the new Darren Pike Truth Project, complete with photos, testimonials from your victims, and a detailed timeline of your criminal activities. It's going to follow you wherever you go. Darren's face went white. That's harassment. "No, that's justice, and it's completely legal." I put my phone away. "Have a nice life, Darren. What's left of it?" I left him standing in the parking lot and drove home, where I found Nadine's car in the driveway. She was sitting on the front porch steps, looking lost and defeated. "The locks," she said as I walked up. "Still changed. Your stuff is in the garage." "Grant, please, can we talk?" "We talked yesterday. You made your choices." "I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, but Yvonne manipulated me. She set this whole thing up." "I know. I proved it in court this morning." I sat down on the steps beside her. "But that doesn't change what you did. You cheated on me, lied to me, and humiliated me in front of the entire town. I can make it right." "No, you can't, because I don't want you to." I looked at her, this woman I'd been married to for 10 years, and felt nothing but exhaustion. "I'm done, Nadine. With you, with the drama, with all of it. What am I supposed to do? I lost the salon. I lost Darren. I have nothing." "You have your freedom. Isn't that what you wanted?" She started crying then, the kind of desperate sobs that came from someone who'd finally realized the full extent of their mistakes. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. "But you did, and now we both have to live with the consequences." I stood up and walked toward the house, then turned back. "There's one more thing. The divorce papers will be served tomorrow. I'm keeping the house, the car, and Murphy. You can have whatever's left in our joint account after I deduct the money you spent on your affair." "How much is left?" "About $300. She looked up at me with shock and despair. $300? That's all?" "That's what a massage costs, right? Seems appropriate." I went inside and closed the door, leaving her sitting on the porch in the drizzle. Through the window, I watched her eventually get up and walk to her car, moving like someone who'd aged 10 years in 10 days. Murphy came over and rested his head on my knee, sensing that something important had just ended. "Just you and me now, boy," I said, scratching his ears. "And that's perfectly fine with me." My phone buzzed with a text from Susan Walsh. "Afternoon edition just hit the stands. Local businesswoman arrested on fraud charges. Front page, above the fold. You might want to pick up a copy." I smiled and poured myself a whiskey, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion. Outside, the rain was getting heavier, washing the streets clean and carrying away the debris of my old life. Tomorrow, I'd go back to work at the hangar, fixing planes and keeping people safe in the sky. It was honest work, important work, and it was enough. But tonight, I was going to sit in my house with my dog and read about how Yvonne Martinez had been arrested at her salon in front of all her clients and employees, led away in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. It wasn't the ending I'd planned when this all started, but it was better than anything I could have imagined. Justice served cold with a side of public humiliation. Perfect.